Okay, in this video, we're going to create a histogram in Google Sheets of a random variable of data. And you can see across the bottom, I've got multiple spreadsheets that I've created ahead of time. This first tab is the tab that's created when you import your data file. And then what I did is I duplicated this sheet, which created this tab. I double-clicked it in order to rename it, and I named it raw data. This will be the tab that I duplicate for each new graph that I make. So having said that, let's do that in order to start making our histogram. So this tab, represents our untouched, our original data that we can always start from fresh if we want to make a new graph or a new chart. So first thing I'm going to do is duplicate it. And you can see it says copy of raw data, but I'm going to rename this so that it makes sense. And I'm going to be recreating the data here, or the graph that's in this tab. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to call this hist for histogram. And then K9, this actually means K is the variable for the number of classes in a histogram, or the number of bars in a histogram. And you will, or we have already learned how to determine a number of classes to start with, to kind of give you some place to start as you kind of do trial and error. And so this is going to have 9 classes, and we're going to make a histogram of the height of roller coasters. So height is one of the random variables in my data. So I'll hit enter. So as you can see, this spreadsheet is an exact copy of this one. As I click between these two, nothing changes up here because they're identical. Okay, so making sure that this copy of my raw data that I just renamed, this copy of the sheet is selected. It's highlighted blue on my computer screen. Now we want to be able to insert a chart. So the first thing we need to do is select the column of data that you want to make a histogram of. So I'm going to make a histogram of height. So I'm going to left click column E, and you can see it selects all of column E. And I'm going to come over here to the insert menu, left click, and insert a chart. Now here, Google Sheets is trying to figure out what my intentions are. It's trying to guess what my intentions are. And so it thinks that I want to create a scatter chart of this column, in which case that is incorrect. I want a histogram. So you can see now this chart is selected, and Google Sheets has already opened up the chart editor. And next to the chart editor, we have setup options and customize options. So right now we're looking at the setup option, and this is where we can set the chart type. And you can see it's a scatter chart, which is what we're looking at here. So we want to left click on chart type. And it's giving us some other suggested ones. And we want a histogram, so you could just click on this. But just in case, what you want isn't suggested, you can scroll down this list of other chart types. So line chart types, area chart types, column, bar, scatter, map, and other. Now notice up here under bar, these column charts look very much like histograms, okay, but they're not. So just be very wary of that. So we don't want a bar chart or a column chart. We want to come down here to other, And in other, you can see we do have something here which looks like a histogram. And when you hold your cursor over this icon, it comes up and tells us that's a histogram chart, and that's what we want. So we'll left click that. And you can see now, having clicked a histogram chart type, we're now looking at a different visual of the data that we are looking at. Okay, the next option down is the data range, and it says it's from E1 to E242. So E1 is this first cell, column E, row 1, and it's going from here all the way down to E242. So if you look on the left-hand side and we scroll down, we can scroll down to row 242. Here we go. So here is row 242. This is the zombie ride. I'm not really sure what that means. It's a steel roller coaster, and here in drive E, this is the height of the zombie ride. It's 150. So this is the last row of data. So that's what it means by the data range. The x-axis, okay, the x-axis is actually a composition of the height data, so there really isn't anything to add here. The series, this is the column of data that we're actually calculating frequencies of. So we're calculating frequencies of height for each class in our histogram. So that looks correct. This box is checked because it says use row 1 as headers. So remember, a header is another word for variable or random variable. So this first row has the names of our random variables. It doesn't actually have data of that variable. Okay, so that's why if we check this box where it says use row 1 as headers, it won't use this first row as data in the histogram. Okay, so this is initially how to get started. You'll notice that there's a lot of things wrong with this. Number one, we want to make sure that we have a histogram with 9 classes in this case, because that's what I calculated based off the data that I have. And this default histogram that Google Sheets has created does not have 9 classes. In fact, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it has 15 classes, and we're going to need to reduce that down to 9. This horizontal axis is missing a title. This vertical axis has a title, but it's not correct, and it's too small. You know, the font size here is too small. This title we don't need here. So there's a lot of things to change. What we want it to look like is this one, which I've prepared ahead of time. So you can see the difference here is this is a much sharper, cleaner, more easier to read histogram. And, you know, we wanted it with 9 classes, and that's what we've got. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 classes. So we can design this histogram to be exactly the way we want it to be. Almost exactly. You know, I couldn't find a way to change the accuracy of the labels here on the horizontal axis. You know, I don't really want this 0.00 under each for each label here on the x-axis. I couldn't figure out how to get rid of that. So if I could, I would have. It's not necessary. But I'm just going based off of what I can do with Google Sheets natively. So this is what we're aiming towards, and this is what we're starting with.